Greetings ladies and gentlefish, and welcome to this video of the Object 416 Soviet Tier 8 medium tank. We're going to have a quick look at some of the qualities of this machine, some replays, but first going to kick things off with just a little bit of history for you. So this was designed by the same bureau of people who put together the proposal for the A-44 tank in the 1940s, which in the Soviet tech tree in the game can be found here at Tier 7. This is actually a post-war design. This was a machine that was designed throughout the 1950s, and it's got a really bizarre configuration, sometimes in the game semi-affectionately referred to by such names as the frying pan of doom. It's an odd layout, and that's partly because when this thing was conceived, it was originally put together to be a lightweight tank design, hence with a low profile, hence the rather squat nature of it. But subsequently, there were some requirements for it to fill the assault gun or self-propelled gun role. Hence, you get a rear-mounted gun. And because this thing had such a squat design and the front half of the tank is essentially pure engine, it means it has the weird distinction of having all 4 crew members in the turret. Usually in most tanks, say you have 4 crew members, gunner, loader, commander, driver, you'll find the gunner, loader and commander are all in the turret, and then the driver is in the hull. But as this is such a low profile machine, there isn't any space for the driver in the hull, and hence he is in the turret as well. The turret itself is actually taken from a T-54, but has been expanded in order to accommodate the 4 crew, because in the T-54 it only needed to accommodate 3 crew members. Unfortunately, this tank never actually entered mass production. It lost out in competition to another design that itself never went into mass production, which in a way is a little bit of a shame, because it's as far as I can see, it's actually a fairly workable tank, and by the standards of Soviet tank design at the time, it was actually quite a comfortable machine to work in. But as it is, it lost out. It wasn't produced in huge numbers, but this is not a complete paper design tank. There is an example, an actual example of this tank in the Kubinka Tank Museum at Moscow. So this thing did and indeed does exist. So what is it that we get in the game? Well, contrary to its SPG or assault gun design proposals, it's in here as a medium tank in the Soviet tech tree, which is a little bit weird, but let's just run with it. So what we've got is a tank that follows on from this slightly quirky tech line. If we have a look at the second Soviet medium tank line here, it branches off from the T-34 at Tier 5. You then get the A-43 and then the A-44, Object 416, and then it splits again. But the original tank line, all the tanks that were introduced, is that from the 416 you would then go to the Object 430 version 2, and then the Object 430. Now I've got full reviews of the T-34, the A-43 and the A-44 if you should be interested in them, and you can of course also reach this tank line by going up the Soviet heavy tanks and then doing a sidestep through the KV-13 to the A-44 and then up to the Object 416. When you get to the Object 416, what modules do you get or do you need to unlock? Well, it's kind of a not so good news, even less good news sort of scenario. The top turret, of course, you won't have. Having said that, in terms of things like raw armor thickness, view range and all that jazz, it's not actually that much of an upgrade. You mainly want it because it improves your gun stats, so that's not critically important, although you do definitely want to get this. The radios are used on a whole variety of different machines. However, there's always has to be a but, right? If you haven't played some of the other higher tier Soviet tanks, let's say this is your first Soviet tank line, then you're going to have to unlock the middle radio and subsequently the stock radio from scratch. They do give this thing an incrementally better and better view range, and the radio range, signal range, not view range, and the stock signal range is not particularly great, but I wouldn't prioritize these things at all. What you want to prioritize is the gun for reasons that will become apparent. Unfortunately, This gun, although it is incredibly similar to essentially the same, or a very similar gun mounted on tanks like the T-54, it is not the same gun. This gun is only used on the Object 416 and the Object 430 version 2, meaning you will not already have this gun unlocked, and it costs 54,000 experience to unlock. I strongly recommend dropping free XP on this thing, because the stock gun here doesn't really work very well at all. You don't want to be using this thing if you can possibly avoid it. So I strongly recommend avoiding it and dropping some free XP on the top gun. You can then grind out the rest of the tank, but the gun really does make or break this tank for reasons that will become apparent. So, what is it you get with this thing? Well, let's start off with what the stats they give you in the game. I'll look at the gun in a bit more detail in a moment. But initially, when you look at survivability, that 1200 hit points should draw your attention for a tier 8 medium tank. That is very, very low. Tier 8 medium tanks typically have between 13 and 1500 hit points. 1200, I think it's the lowest of any tier 8 medium tank. Hull armor, 75mm at the front, 45 on the side, 45 on the rear. Turret armor, 110, 75, 75. We'll talk about that more in some detail later, but for now, those numbers really are it. The armour on this tank, apart from the gun mantlet, rarely goes much above about 150mm, which means you cannot rely on the armour of this machine. This thing is not about the armour or the survivability. Mobility. You have a 400 horsepower engine, and it's the only engine you can mount on this tank, which sounds a bit weedy, but the tank is only 24 tons. It was, remember, designed to be quite lightweight, giving this a very respectable specific power of 16.46 horsepower per ton. Forward speed limit is 50 kilometers an hour, backwards 20 kilometers an hour, traverse speed 54.24, and it will do all of that. Those numbers do not lie. This is a pretty decently mobile machine, which is good. There's bad news to come. Concealment, while I wouldn't normally spend too long worrying about this particular stat, actually for a medium tank, these are some pretty good values. It's a small, low-profile, sneaky machine, so actually the camo rating is pretty good. View range, well, this is the view range I've got once you've factored in all my equipment and whatnot. The base view range is 380, which for a tier 8 tank is... it gets the job done. It's not fantastic, it's alright. About the best you can say about it. Now, let's talk about the gun. I'm not going to talk about the stock gun because the stock gun's a bit naff. Let's talk about the top gun. 100mm M63. 100mm gun, surprise, surprise, 7.5 rounds per minute rate of fire. Okay, let's compare it to the T-44's 100mm gun. 7.41 rounds a minute rate of fire. So it has a higher rate of fire than the T-44, fair enough. Penetration 201, penetration 183. It has higher penetration than the T-44. Alpha damage 320. Alpha damage 250. It has higher alpha damage and a higher rate of fire than the T-44. Good lord. Accuracy at 0.37 is a bit lackluster. 2.3 second aim time. Essentially, this gun has the best DPM of any tier 8 medium tank, and by quite a considerable margin. In fact, when you actually compare this gun to most of the tier 8 medium tank guns, what you realise is that it has a very, very comparable reload time of around about 6.9 seconds, depending on your exact equipment and crew loadout and all that jazz. So a very comparable reload time, but it has 320 alpha damage, where most of the others have 240, 250. So it just has better DPM. The base DPM of this thing is something like 2400, which is really very impressive indeed. Something else that we should note, of course, is that despite the fact that both of these guns are 100mm guns, the HE rounds have 420 alpha as opposed to 330, and this thing fires heat ammunition as its premium round rather than APCR for 330 pen rather than 235. That is 95 pen more. That is redonkulous for tier 8, and it's because this is essentially the tier 9 medium tank gun for the Soviets, the gun you find on the T-54 and the Object 430 version 2, mounted at tier 8. This machine is all about that gun, and what a gun. Now, as you could see, it does have its downsides. The accuracy isn't fantastic, but honestly, apart from... there's nothing bad about this gun. The accuracy is mediocre. The armor piercing penetration is mediocre. Everything else is good. The rate of fire is good. The alpha damage is excellent. The heat penetration is obscene. The HE rounds are good. The aim time is perfectly acceptable. So this is a damn good gun to have on a tier 8 medium tank, and dictates how you really play this machine. Some other points to note about this tank before we go any further. As noted here, the gun depression is 3 degrees, which is whole kinds of bloody awful. The gun elevation is 15 degrees, which is much more impressive. But yeah, gun depression sucks on this tank. With my configuration, the DPM is 2781, which is very, very nice indeed. You could squeeze a bit more out of that, but that is the configuration that I have gone with. However, we mentioned there's 3 degrees of gun depression. That's made especially awkward by the fact that it's a rear-mounted turret. What else about this tank sucks? Well, there are 2 other really notable features that will drive you up the wall. 1. The engine is mounted in the front. This is about the only module location worth worrying about. All of this front is engine deck. If people shoot you in the front, you will burn. Your engine will die. It's like the A44 in that regard. Except that you don't have the, relative to its tier anyway, you don't have the armour of the A44, so that is something to be wary of. Try not to poke the front of your tank out around corners, try to side scrape, and try not to do it when anyone's looking at you because they will damage you. And side scraping is a little bit awkward, especially when you consider you have these flattened parts of armour that people can just shoot you in, so beware of that. So it has bad gun depression, you have the engine in the front, and the turret isn't fully traversable. I know, people should really tell you this beforehand, which is why I am. The gun can traverse to around about that sort of angle, maybe a little bit more. It can't even go fully round to the side. It's around about to there. So this thing has you could think of it as being a tank destroyer with a very wide gun arc. And that's really how this thing plays, somewhere between a medium tank and a tank destroyer. It has a gun that would be very, very punchy for a medium tank at tier 8, compared to the tank destroyers at tier 8. It lacks a bit of the alpha damage and penetration, but it is certainly, you know, up there with things like DPM. It's a very mobile machine, but it has bad gun depression. This is, in my opinion, actually a very well-balanced tank, with one notable exception, but I will whinge about that after I've shown you all the gameplay. This is actually a very well-balanced tank. It has some very good qualities, it has some pretty terrible qualities. Whether you like it or not is really going to come down to a matter of preference. I hated this thing when I first played it, but it has really grown on me. Just a quick note about things like crew skills, equipment, etc. With your crew skills, you do really want Sixth Sense on your commander. Because your engine is likely to get shot quite a lot, on your driver, preventative maintenance may not actually be a terrible idea. You can see I don't have it, but you might want to invest in it. Although, honestly, you want to try and avoid getting shot in the engine as much as you can. Safe storage is never a bad plan on your loader, and then all the good stuff, repairs, vision range enhancing skills, brothers in arms, all of that standard spiel. Equipment, vertical stabilizer, yes. Gun rammer, yes. And then you have a choice, standard choice, optics or vents, really. I've gone for optics just to make myself able to be a bit better at spotting in those tier 10 matches. You might want to go for vents to further improve the gun performance. That's really up to you. Ammunition, I've got 2 rounds of high explosive, 25 armor piercing, and 8 high explosive anti-tank. Yeah, it's a tank that you can run out of ammunition in, or you can certainly come close, because it is capable of dealing an awful lot of damage, and once again, the accuracy is a bit on the mediocre side. And I've got your standard set of consumables here. Whether you want to change that up or not, I leave up to you. So, from this point, let's just go and have a quick look at armor profile and some gameplay, and then we'll come back to the garage. Okay then, so armor layout, not a huge surprise. The rear is trash on the hull and the turret. Sides, hull, still trash. Turret, still trash. I mean, if someone hits you right towards the front where you've got all this sloping going on, sure, you can get a bounce, but don't rely on it. Front of the hull, 121 effective armor, and that's not going to bounce an awful lot. Lower front plate, in case anyone needs it, is around about 105 effective. Turret front, 150, 180, 160. gun mantlet, sections of ludicrous, and sections of tissue. You can get some bounces from this, but you shouldn't be relying on it too much. If you angle your tank something like this, then you're looking at armor values of around about, what, only up to 80 on the hull, 130 on the front of the hull, 111, 136. You really need an auto bounce angle on the side for this to work, and then you're looking at an angle of around about that maximum. The front of your hull doesn't really go above about 140 millimeters of armor, which is a little disappointing. Commander's cupola on top of the tank, though if I'm going to be honest, no one ever really needs to shoot that. Your armor is generally enough to shrug off HE rounds, or at least not get penetrated by HE rounds, and that's about it. I can't really think of any tank this machine is going to meet that's going to really struggle to penetrate it. Maybe tier 6, some tier 6 lights might bounce off your front occasionally, and you might get the odd miracle bounce from a weird angle, but the armor on this tank really isn't going to save your bacon all that much. Top tier match then, and this is on the Siegfried line. It's an assault game. We're on the defending team. And about a third of the enemy team, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them, about a third, slightly over, of the enemy team are tier 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, similar sort of story for us. We have an extra tier 8 light, fair enough, but then we also have an extra tier 5 light compared to theirs. Bear in mind, this is a patch 9.17 game, so this is before they made the light tank and artillery changes, but none of that really changed the Object 416 at all. So, gonna go into a kind of tank destroyer relocation. Really, the Object 416 is very good at providing supporting fire, especially when top tier. Like I said, it's sort of this medium tank destroyer hybrid, and there you can see the extent of the gun traverse. The gun doesn't go any more than what you just saw there. So trying to see if we can get any shots on people toward the beginning of this match, although so far no one appears to be playing ball, which makes us very, very sad indeed. VK3002M, is he going to give it a go? No, we take a shot, but no dice. Oni appears to want to try his luck. The reload on this gun is surprisingly good for 320 alpha at tier 8. 200 pen, struggles with the front of an Oni though. Side armor, however, if you were giving me some side armor, we'll take that punt, but no dice, unfortunately. Oh, if he's going to wiggle forward ever so slightly, nah, he decides to back off. He thinks discretion is the better part of valor. Fair enough, can't really disagree with him too much in that particular scenario. So far we've taken a few shots. Most of them have been ineffective. They were kind of chancy shots, but we managed to land one of them. So just having a look at the opposition over here, it doesn't seem to be particularly heavy, and if we slightly reposition, we should hopefully be able to get a better field of fire onto these people. And here you can see the mobility of the tank. It's pretty good. It's not the fastest tier 8 tank, but it's far from the slowest. The mobility is definitely decent. Taking a little bit of a risk here, but I figure if there were loads and loads of tank destroyers camping back there, the IS-6 would have been obliterated a long time ago. So I reckon I'm safe. Might take a hit here from the Lerva, then again I might not. And, oh, there is a Ferdinand here, and we end up taking a hit from a Nashorn. Take a shot there on the move. I just want to get back because I don't want to get slammed by that Nashorn. Instead, I end up taking a HE round. Sorry, I didn't want to get slammed by the Ferdy. Instead, I take a HE round from the Oni and an AP round from the Ferdinand, and there goes a lot of my health. So, misjudged that situation. I thought it was unlikely there was going to be a tank destroyer back there. Turns out I was wrong, but I did learn, if you have a look at the amount of damage done by the guy, he was firing AP. I did learn that the Ferdinand has the small gun. He's not using the 128, because the 128 would have done a lot more damage to me than 308. He's using the 105mm gun by the look of it, and he even low rolled. So, going back to lick our wounds, we don't really want to make that sort of mistake again. We're very low on health here. 1200 health at tier 8 does not go far at all. It doesn't give you much more than the tier 8 tank destroyers, unfortunately. Oni appears to be coming out to play, so we'll put one into his side. So does someone else. Word to the wise, mate. You want to point your front where the bad guys are, because your front's where your armor is. Your sides, yeah, not so hot. Haven't had a particularly spectacular game so far. Still really waiting for this match to warm up. Playing a bit circumspect, especially as we're on such low health. I mean, the Object 416 doesn't have great armor, as we already mentioned, and of course that 1200 hit points doesn't really go very far. So you do need to be careful. I mean, it wouldn't... 3 shots from an IS-3. He wouldn't need to roll that high with his damage to kill you. So you do want to be a little bit careful. Having said that, in 5 minutes, really would have been nice if we'd done more than 800 damage, but the team is holding the enemies off well enough at the moment. And as this is an assault match, the emphasis really is on the enemy team to get off their backsides and be the ones that do the advancing, the killing. The time constraint is really on them. Going for a slightly different position, trying to make myself effective, as the scoreline is now 6-8, and I'm a little concerned with how it's going. 7-8, okay, pulled back a little bit. Again, you can see the mobility, cruising along at around about 50 kilometers an hour most of the time, unless you're driving through trees, as I'm doing here. And, oh, hello, Mr. WZ. He takes out my tracks. He doesn't have a repair crew. He either doesn't have or doesn't want to use his repair kit, so he is dead. Got a bit lucky with that tracking shot, but you know what? I will take the luck when it comes. Not going to object in the slightest. So we got this AMX coming over from the right. No joy there. Leopard manages to take him out. Emil, put one into him. Sounds like we did a crit as well. Trying not to get shot at by this fellow. He is the other side of a piece of concealment, which is, well, doing me a hand with regard to me not taking damage. And you can see how quickly the damage racks up when you have a chance to just shoot at people and penetrate them with nice easy shots. 320 alpha with a pretty tasty reload. Scoreline is now 12-10. Going to see if we can get the flanking shot on that Emil. Hello, little Emil. Hopefully you're distracted by the IS-3. I can probably take one shot from this guy, but not really much more than that. Looks like he's distracted though. 340 into him. And the IS-3 finishes him off. We've done over 2,000 damage now, by the way. So we've had a reasonable impact, or a reasonable damage done in this match. Most of it was a bit later than I might have liked, but, you know, it's just running with the situation as you find it. We haven't dipped into any premium rounds or anything like that. And we're just left with this Super Pershing and the Ferdinand that we got surprised by earlier on. 2 minutes 43 left on this match. We should win it at this point, so I'm not too concerned about whether the victory will be ours or not. I just want to try and do a little bit more damage to these guys. There's still a good 800 health left on the Super Pershing, and the Ferdinand has now moved up, and with any luck the Ferdinand has a good slab of health remaining as well. Yep, looks like all 1500 of his health is still on his tank, so hopefully we should be able to shave these hit points for some more damage. Flanking shots. There we go. The accuracy may be fairly mediocre on this gun, but honestly, with the decent reload leading to decent alpha damage, it's the accuracy is good enough. It's quite a comfortable gun to use. That shot unfortunately bounces. And trying... No, that one bounces. If those shells had been premium ammunition, they'd have gone straight through. And we're actually loading a premium round after this next one. It's entirely possible we wouldn't need it. Taking the shot blind. Nope. And we switch back to the armor piercing. Over 3,000 damage done now as we farm the last few hit points from that Ferdinand. Is the IS-3 going to pick up the kill? Or maybe even the Super Pershing? Or are we going to get the honours? Worth pointing out, all of us can definitely be hurt by this Ferdinand. There we go, into his side. Kill number 3, 3,309 damage done. And that is the game. So, let's go and have a look at the post-battle stats for this one. There we go, second class mastery, duelist, fire for effect, and high caliber medals. We were running a premium account at the time, bear that in mind when you see things like the experience and credits earned. 3,309 damage done in the end, 3 kills, 998 base experience. The IS-3 had a pretty decent game, racking up 4 kills of his own and over 1,000 base XP. 20 shots fired, 16 hits, 12 penetrations for that damage count. Around about half of it was from more than 300 meters. 4 hits received, 3 penned, 1 didn't. It's about as much as you can expect from the armor on this tank, to be honest. 1 enemy vehicle spotted, 5 damaged, 3 destroyed, 3.5 kilometers traveled. Now, ammunition resupply cost. We fired 1 heat round that game, although it didn't do anything, but we did fire a single heat round. The rest was armor piercing. Repair costs were just shy of 9,000 credits. Ammunition resupply cost 28,000. That means that even with a premium account, having received a gross income of over 40,000 credits, our net income is only 3,500. Without a premium account, that would have been a 10,000 credit loss. As I said in the garage, this is not a cheap tank to run. Anyway, let's go and have a look at a bottom tier match. Here we go then, tier 10 match, and actually as you can see in the in-game chat, when I played this particular game, the night I played this particular game, I was having quite a lot of tier 10 games in this machine, but it was capable of doing its thing. So the reason I specifically chose this replay, I could have shown you a quote-unquote better game, you know, with more damage and all that stuff, but I wanted to specifically show you this one just to show you how the premium ammunition does perform. Now, I only fire 1 round of premium ammo this match. Unfortunately, because of replaying consistencies and versions and all that jazz, you can't actually see what ammo I am firing in this match, but I will let you know when I fire that 1 round of high explosive anti-tank ammo. Everything else will be armor piercing. I don't think I fire any high explosive this match. So, tier 10 match, a good 6 tanks on each team are top tier, so just over a third are tier 10, and about another third are tier 8. Just under a third of tier 9. So, just seeing if we can I should probably actually mention, hello Mr. T57 Heavy. This is of course the Fjords map. I was just seeing initially if I could ambush any of the heavy tanks as they go to heavy tank corner. Managed to get a shot into the rear of that T57 Heavy, so I like to think that was worth it. And while the reload on this gun is not too bad, it was not good enough to put a shot into either of those American heavies once again. Scoreline is already 2-0 though, as we managed to claim their Batchat and their Centurion. So well done to our Borsig and our 50B. Hello Mr. Mouse. And that one just bounces off. We're going to see more of him later on. So, yeah, put in 1 penetrating hit so far. Not colossally impressive. Would have been nice to penetrate that mouse, but the shot ended up going in his angled side armor. We've only got about 200 pens, so can't expect miracles, and that guy gets deleted. And remember, this is a patch 9.17 match, so that guy died and I didn't get splashed by the Conqueror gun carriage. This is the old artillery that was a nuke. Speaking of which, our T92 just one-shot their TVP T5051, where artillery was a nuke but didn't have the splash radius that it does now. Again, that doesn't make a huge difference to how you play the Object 416, but it's just worth bearing in mind. Had that been new artillery, I would most likely have taken some damage there, but our Waffle may not have just straight out died. Scorpion there, we put a shot into him. Could load a high explosive round for him. The thing is, I don't know if he's going to be the person I shoot next. That's the only slightly awkward thing about doing that. He has fired And he is dead anyway. Managed to pick up a little bit of assistance damage on that Scorpion, which is nice. Scoreline is 4-1. FV4202 has gone down and is tackling an AMX 5100. It looks like the 5100 is currently reloading, otherwise I would expect that 4202's health to have just withered away. So that ends up working out for the best. Scoreline is 5-2. And the 4202 seems a bit miffed that the AMX 30 had the audacity to pick up the kill. Oh well, never mind. Let's just push onwards. We've got a CDC just around the corner. Can we do anything to him? I should hope so. It's not as if he's packing much in the way of armor, but he does have pretty decent mobility. Run, Frenchie, run, Frenchie, run, run, run. But we've got reasonable mobility as well. We put one shot into the front of him. We take one from him, one from the mouse that takes out our engine, and we don't want to be fighting that mouse. Right, now that is a bad plan. There's also the E5 to our right-hand side. Thankfully, the 50B comes in to give us a hand. We find their artillery, put one shot into him. Stay on the move so that artillery doesn't absolutely destroy us, although it looks like we're going to be denied a further shot into that arty. 50B is going for the mouse. Looks like the 50B has run out of clip. So we bounce a shot off the rear of the mouse's turret, and this is the one round of high explosive anti-tank ammo we load this match. No, sorry. I lie. Oh, we take one more shot from the mouse. This is our one round of high explosive anti-tank ammo. Turret cheeks, 320 pen. There we go. Straight through. And that is the sort of thing you get with this premium ammunition. You can penetrate some shots you wouldn't otherwise have expected to be able to penetrate. There goes the T57 Heavy. That was just a good old-fashioned regular armor-piercing round. And that is the match. So that's really why I wanted to show you that game, just to show you what the heat ammo is capable of, and just knowing your weak spots. The mouse's turret front is relatively weak. You need about, well, when I played this match, you needed about 270 pen to have a sort of 60-40 chance of going through. Couldn't do it with my AP rounds, but of course the heat ammunition, nice, big, relatively flat surface to go for. Boom. Managed to kill the mouse. So, let's go and have a look at the post-game stats for this one. And here we go. That match was good enough for second class mastery, fire for effect, and a Lava Schleio's medal, which you get for being in a medium tank and killing 2 enemy tanks, and they have to be 1 or 2 tiers higher than you or something like that. Finished third on our team, 1730 damage done, 2 kills, 907 base experience, 9 shots fired, 9 hits, 6 penetrations for that damage count, most of which ended up being from fairly close range. Received 4 hits, 3 penetrated, 1 did not. 3 enemy vehicles spotted, 5 damage, 2 destroyed, 8, a grand total of 8 assistance damage, almost 2 kilometers travelled. And again, a note on the expenses. Auto repairs for the vehicle, 10,000 credits, not cheap. Auto resupply ammunition, 8,610. Now, just a quick note here. I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, for some reason or other, I'm not sure why, but for some reason, I think I had some of that ammunition already stocked up. So some of the shells I fired, the ammunition resupply costs are not showing up in that. And so whilst it says with a premium account I made a profit, actually, in real terms, I don't think I did. So again, this is an expensive tank to run. 1361 XP with a premium account. There would have been, of course, 907 without. Let's go and finish things off in the garage then. Overall then, I actually rather like this machine. I didn't like it when I first played it. It grew on me, and now I like it to the point that I'm going to keep it. So I've had to train up a new crew for the Object 430 version 2. It's a really nice middle ground between medium tanks and tank destroyers, but this is very much going to be a glass half full, glass half empty kind of tank. If you look at it and the weaknesses of it, which are glaring, make it too frustrating for you to play, then you're going to hate it. If the strengths of it outshine those weaknesses, then you're going to love it. is the glass going to be half full or half empty for you? And that's why I say this tank I think is actually quite well balanced. And it offers something new in tier 8 medium tanks. There is nothing really quite like this. In fact, the tank off the top of my head that is the closest to this in play style, and even then there are some notable differences in my opinion, was the old ELC AMX. Yeah, it's a fun tank to play, but I'm going to complain about one point on it, and that one point are these heat rounds. I'm going to have a whinge. 330 penetration at tier 8. This is the one balancing thing I do not like with this tank. They have taken the gun, and this isn't a fault of the tank per se, it's a fault of the gun, and the gun is essentially the Soviet tier 9 medium tank gun. You have a gun with slightly lackluster penetration, but it's okay, boys. You can get around that if you want to by just pressing the 2 key. Then your penetration goes from 201 to 330, and as you saw in the replays, then you can start penetrating some ludicrous points. I have never liked that way of balancing stuff. I think, and I could have a whinge here about premium ammunition and what I think Wargaming should do about it. I'm not going to, I'm just going to leave it at I don't like that quality on the tank. One thing I don't think I really mentioned earlier on in the first bit of the garage section of this replay, and I had intended to, shell costs 1230 credits per shell. It's expensive. You are not really going to be making much of a profit in this tank, even if you don't dip into the premium ammunition. This is an expensive tank to run. Even the high explosive rounds are over 1,000 credits. And bearing in mind, this is more expensive than a lot of 122mm guns, and you do less alpha damage. In fact, 1200 credits, let's just very, very quickly compare that with, I don't know, for example, the IS-6. 1025 credits for its armor-piercing shells. 608 for its high explosive shells. These shells do more damage. So, profitable, the Object 416 is not. However, in my opinion, it is actually rather enjoyable to play. If I have a quick look at my stats, 161 battles, 61% win rate, 1.77 damage ratio, average damage per battle of 1628, which for a tier 8 medium tank is pretty sweet. Max damage in a battle, 4717, 5 kills, over 2000 experience, bearing in mind that was with a premium account at the time. I'm currently sitting at 80.62% on the Marks of Excellence, and I have just over 2,500 WN8 for anyone who cares about it. Just to put those numbers into perspective and try and give you an idea of how the tank performs. It's, in my opinion, a nice tank overall. It's a keeper for me, but it is not going to be for everyone. I think it's very much going to be a bit of a Marmite tank. You either love it or you hate it. I started hating it. I eventually grew to love it. Anyway, enough of me rambling on. I hope you guys enjoyed that review and possibly found it informative. If you did, by all means feel free to send me some of your replays if you want for subscriber replays. Upload them to whatreplays.com. Send me the link in a PM on YouTube. Tune in to catch some of my other videos. Feel free to look at some of my other tank reviews or catch a stream. And whatever it is you do, I hope you enjoy doing it, and I will hopefully catch you guys in another video. And I wish you very, very happy tanking on that battlefield. Ciao, ciao.